Hello, Mr. Hayden Collins, who is running for the 11th District, Georgia U.S. House Congressional Representative.
You want to start again?
Yeah.
Please do. Why don't you go ahead and start again? And Ed, would you like a drink?
I think I'm eating one. All right, here we go. Hello, Mr. Hayden Collins, who is running for the 11th District U.S. House Representative. I'm Trenton Adams, and welcome to the Cherokee County Republican Party candidate interviews. Thank you for taking time out of your campaign to participate in this interview process. We've extended this invitation to all candidates in this race and sourced questions from the CCRP membership. We have found that it has been an asset for voters in making their decision. The video will appear on the Cherokee County GOP website and will be shared on social media. The interview will be shown unedited in its entirety. For the interview, we will ask you a number of questions but can offer no prompting. There are no right or wrong answers, only your answers. We ask each candidate the same questions. If this is all right with you, I'll have everyone introduce themselves, and then I'll ask John to begin asking the questions.
This is fine. Please, let's continue.
I'm John Longshore.
Harry Abrams.
Are you for or against a national ID card? Please explain your position.
Very nice. I would dare say it's a state issue and it's under 10th Amendment, and I would not represent myself in a national ID card, but I do think the national ID card that we have that you applied for is called a passport. By all means.
What is your position on the Federal Reserve Bank? What is the biggest reform you would make to the Federal Reserve? Third part of the question, how would you achieve this?
Okay, we will repeat this one at a time. So let's go off with position on the Federal Reserve Bank. I do not have a position on the Federal Reserve Bank. They have not hired me, nor have they sent me an opportunity to work for them. Now, if you're inquiring to the position that the bank takes and how the money flows to the United States and how it's borrowed and what the Fed does, we have a significant issue in regards to how things are elaborated and done but not audited. So we have conditions that take place that we're not really sure of. It just happens behind the curtain like magic. And I really think that there's an opportunity to get behind the curtain and audit that. Now the second part.
What is the biggest reform you would make to the Federal Reserve?
Auditing process, without a doubt. And next.
How would you achieve this?
Now this is where the polarization has to come to an end, because this would have to be a bipartisan issue to come across the board. And what would get people behind this is we look at the Exchequer of England. The Exchequer of England just a month and a half ago, gave a speech to all of Parliament and reported to Parliament that the entire country is going to be in surplus and out of debt in 3 years. That's England. That's our ally. We should be able to do better. If we get everybody behind an initiative and address the debt as a solid initiative, bipartisan on both sides of the aisle, so we do not rip off generations for time to come, and if England can do it and we can't, that would be the rallying cry. We rally everyone behind that cry. We go in, we do audits, we set up ourselves for success and not for failure, and then we get ourselves into a surplus, because here's what happens. The regulations, when they disappear, and the entrepreneurs, once they're cut loose, you won't have to worry about your economy. You cut these individuals loose, you cut their businesses loose, and you watch the money flow. Then this debt will disappear. The regulations that regulate them and can choke small business and choke everything else they have to deal with will slowly go to the wayside as more and more individuals who see the success will come around to the right way of thinking and pay off this debt.
What is your view of the balance in power in Washington among the executive, judicial, and legislative branches?
Very good. That's an opinionated question. I like that. Here recently, one would have to look at the effects of the national media in regards to that balance and how it's affected the balance. If you look at it from the point of view of, let's say you're a major radio talk show host, every time something happens, it's guilt by association. Everybody's guilty in that group, and it creates that polarization that separates it. Even now you see groups coming together saying they have to reinforce the Constitution. No, they just need the individuals that have the courage enough to follow it. The separations, they're designed right. If the individuals in D.C. represented the integrity that the Founding Fathers did, then this wouldn't be an issue. However, the integrity that we see now, if the Founding Fathers were to follow that integrity, we would be under British rule.
The executive branch has more than 60 armed bureaucracies, including the EPA, the Department of Education, and the USDA, yet the Constitution makes no mention of a federal police force. Please explain your position on the armed federal agencies controlled by the executive branch.
That's very enlightening. I was not aware that we had 60 armed groups under the executive branch. That's very disturbing. You know, thank God for the Second Amendment. Just read that again, because you hooked me on the 60 groups under the executive branch that are armed. Please, by all means, enlighten me.
The executive branch has more than 60 armed bureaucracies, including the EPA, the Department of Education, and the USDA, yet the Constitution makes no mention of a federal police force. Please explain your position on the armed federal agencies controlled by the executive branch.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that bad. There's a lot of individuals in bureaucracies that have built themselves into empire building, if you will. I think the worst one is the VA. I don't think it's the EPA or any of those guys when it comes to bureaucracy building. But this is ruling by fear. This is individual empires that they build inside the government, that they create positions where they have to have armed individuals. Would they not be supported by other branches of the government? That doesn't sound very healthy, and that's not something that I would really like to support. So let's leave it at that, please. And thank you for that question.
What gun control laws and policies do you support?
At the radio station, on the air, my wife was hosting in the lobby. We were having a good time, and I had a couple of candidates for office in there. At the time, I'm on the air, and I cannot hear or see this. I was told this by the individual running for office as they came in and interviewed on the air, that a gentleman came peeling into the parking lot, jumped out of his car, pulled his pistol, put it over the top of his hood, as the sheriff and the state police pulled into the parking lot and drew their weapons as well. At this point, the guy that was in there said, "Sorry, I'm not carrying my weapon today," and he was obviously a worker for the campaign guy, and he reached over and locked the door. He goes, "What are we going to do?" And my wife took her 9mm out of her purse and took advantage of the situation and said, "Guys, why don't you get in the lobby? I'll handle it from here." And she took advantage of that situation. She looked over her shoulder at the individual that was running for Senate, and she goes, "What's your opinion on the Second Amendment?" I support no gun restrictions. My wife will come after me if I do. But all teasing aside, understand the Second Amendment stands. There is no restrictions necessary.
Would you support a federal law permitting the right to carry a firearm across state lines?
Oh, wow. That's a good 10th of Amendment question there. All right, let's look at it this way. If the states agree to that, then it's a state issue. I don't see that being a federal issue, but I understand the problem, because here is the problem. My wife can carry in several states. I can carry in several states, but there are states that we can't. So we have to maintain a secure weapon when we drive through those states, and there are opportunities where we will get in trouble and a felony will be filed. It's a 10th Amendment issue, and I should hope that all the states would come together for that. I don't see that as being a federal issue, because the Second Amendment stands and there should not be any laws trajecting with that. So.
Would you support immigration reform that includes securing the United States' borders?
Two questions in one, and very short. Very good. My policy on immigration is pretty solid. My family's riddled with immigrants, and go on record, I can say I'm not afraid of immigrants. They do not bother me. I don't think they're out to kill me. When I travel the world and go around, they're not hunting for me. They're doing other things. I'm on record, and I have posted on my website that the opportunity we're giving for immigration is we would like to see an Ellis Island effect throughout the Southwest, to where we can build that wall, fine, set it up, but funnel them to an area where they can all be vetted and brought in accordingly, and the sign on the front door remains.
What is an inalienable right?
Philosophical question, very good. Natural rights and inalienable rights. Let's look at it somewhat like the Founding Fathers did and play this out accordingly. I can choose my own future. I can make my own decisions, and I have that freedom of choice. I have the right of that choice. As long as I can continue to do that and make that choice with the freedom and the ability to do so without infringement, that is my inalienable right.
The right to life is a core principle of the Republican Party values. What are your exceptions and why?
In my home, from 1993, 94, up until just a couple of years ago, we turned our home into a group home foster home. We specifically worked with methamphetamine children, cocaine, heroin, sex abuse children, recently with rape victims. We've had several different races, regardless, it does not matter. They all ate at the same table. And we had girls who came to us under extreme conditions, without going into detail, and we will not talk about cases, of course. They were not of their own free will, and they made their decisions, although we pushed that we may adopt the child from them. They made their decision. They supported themselves in regards to that matter, and I, as a foster parent, could not gain any control nor represent anything during that time. But rest assured, the children we did adopt, we set the example for that. You wanted exceptions. Obviously, from the children that I've worked with and the girls that we've worked with, I know what my exceptions are. Thank you.
Public office is not a career, but a calling to represent American citizens. Will you sponsor a House bill to abolish congressional retirement?
Wow, there is a congressional retirement? I've seen guys in there for 40 some odd years. Let's go a different route. Let's do the term limits. Let's do House of Representatives for 12 years and the Senate for 12 years, okay? And leave it at that. Because once they're out and we get a fine rotation of fresh blood on a consistent basis, these kind of questions will disappear.
Do you support congressional term limits, and why or why not?
Okay, really? Yeah, all right, yes, congressional term limits, yes. On my radio show, we actually had the University of Alabama come on and present the term limit cases that we supported, and we actually helped direct that. Monticello and Thomas Jefferson's home, along with the Morvan estate, was a part of this program. The entire program that was put together was for 2 terms for the Senate, 12 years obviously, and the terms for the House to equal 12 years. So it could be equally represented and not one individual in office would feel cheated. The option is if somebody in the House had served their 12 years, although they could not serve in the same seat, they could come out and run for Senate and serve 12 more additional years on the Senate side, and the Senate could do just the opposite on the House side. We understand the limitations of that as well, because it would react to the House of Representatives Speaker of the House position in somewhat of a fast-paced way that we would not have a Speaker of the House for 40 years in a row. So yes, term limits would be a most positive thing to support the next generation and their needs for change.
Have you read the current Republican Party platform adopted at the 2012 RNC Convention, and if so, what principle best describes you?
No. The division inside the Republican Party that was represented at the Georgia Convention just this last year, and the division we see in the Republican Party right now, and their willingness to change the rules willy-nilly, does not give the integrity of the documents that they should have, because they are subject to change based on the whim of politics. The document's 2 years old. I would be more interested in the document they're going to print right before the convention.
Do you believe that money has a corrupting influence in politics? If so, what steps should be taken to curb it?
One has to go back in history to look at this to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who made an interesting comment that he would take campaign contributions from anyone, but he would behold to no one. He would be beholding to no one. He would not owe anyone anything. And he told them that when they contributed to his campaign. The dollar is a vote. The dollar is influence. When the dollar comes from the citizen of the United States to the candidates, that's direct influence from the citizen to the candidate. The indirect influence that unbalances the scales, if you will, is where you have the special interest groups or the PACs that will come together and throw money at that candidate, which tilts the scales away from the citizen's input into the political spectrum for candidates who are running for office. The second part of your question, please.
Do you believe money has a corrupting influence in politics? If so, what steps should be taken to curb it?
You know, and that raises an interesting question. We've covered this on the radio show a couple of times too, and we really haven't come to a definitive answer. And I think there's going to be greater minds out there that can come together and come with a really good answer. Because some of the problems we ran into, for example, for the 11th Congressional District, if only people inside the district were allowed to contribute to that person, then the most influential person in that district could be Boss Hogg, just like on the Dukes of Hazzard. So Boss Hogg would manipulate everybody, and Boss Hogg would do this, and then that person would win because Boss Hogg wants them to win. So you have to have outside influence from the district to be able to contribute to those candidates. You follow that? Now here's the opposite side. At what point do you have so many outside individuals contributing to the candidates to where there is no longer any local influence? And that's the struggle we have right now. You see that being displayed right now nationally, and how it's playing out with individuals who are running for office and not running for office. It is somewhat scary the amount of influence that has come from this, regardless if it's felt to be corrupt or not. It is free speech, and it is influential.
For over 40 years, women have had the legal protection to seek an abortion. Many object to this, citing religious belief. Do you believe that it is acceptable as a policymaker to cite your religious beliefs in crafting social policy that affects Americans of all faiths?
There is no atheist in a foxhole. None whatsoever. See this? That. I earned that, and I did so with my knowledge, my standards, and the things that I had learned while going to church. But church did not help me pull the trigger. My beliefs are what I led by. The example I set is the example I set. The abortion part of this question, so much research goes into this. So let's go on record for actually answering the question for what it is. I believe for no federal dollars for any abortion. Sandra and I, you can read about it, it's public knowledge. We've lost enough children of our own. We have no birth children. That's why we adopted as many as we did and worked with as many as we did. We have a firm belief that adoption is the answer. But just like we have people trying to dictate their beliefs on other individuals, I'm not willing to do that. When I go to Washington, D.C., I go to Washington, D.C. as Hayden Collins. I don't go to Washington, D.C. to go to church. I go to Washington, D.C. to lead and set an example based on the example and the integrity that I have set with my family, my household, and my service.
Last year, the Supreme Court issued an opinion legalizing gay marriage. Are you okay with this? If not, what steps are you willing to take to reverse this?
Last year, the Supreme Court issued a decision saying that gay marriage could not be banned. It's in the decision. I understand the press has said that, and several other individuals have said that. So essentially, if you read this, what the Supreme Court did is they said, this is a religious issue, this is not a federal government issue, and you can't ban it. But if you have churches involved in it, you need to address it, and they sent it back to the states. Personally, we've had bisexual children in our home, we didn't kick them out. We've had gay children in our home, we didn't kick them out. It's not of a nature that I would judge them. It's not in a position for me to judge them. They will be judged afterwards, and I will have nothing to do with it.
What is the single most important reform besides repealing Obamacare that needs to be made to get our fiscal house in order?
You assume a lot. You assume that the first thing that I would want to repeal is Obamacare in your question. By far, that is not the first thing I would like to repeal. Trust me, there are several presidential orders that I would like to take out and trash even before I get to Obamacare. Because understand, 9 of the things in Obamacare were originally introduced by the Bush administration and shut down by Mr. Kennedy on the Democratic side before he died of brain cancer. One of those issues was to have no pre-existing conditions. I have a very ill wife that I have struggled for years to pay for things, to continually pay for things to make sure she stays alive. I wanted that to go through during the Bush administration. It's fine that it went through during Obamacare, but I'm no big fan of Obamacare because my kids are struggling. 2 part-time jobs, they haven't got enough money to pay for it. You know, I got GIs out there, they work at the drill, they work during the weekends, they still got to work another job to pay for it. No, that's not enough. It's got to be revamped. We have to come up with a better solution. I like going back to the 9 original parts that George Bush presented in regards to his bill that he took up there that Kennedy killed. I like that. So let's take it to the next level. Let's go to something that's near and dear to everyone's heart. I know everybody loves Common Core. It's just one of the most wonderful things that are out there, and ruining our education system. So here, listen to this, to the moment that your heart can understand that you and you are the most important resource this country has. You are the youth. If we do not invest in the education that you acquire, you will not be competitive anywhere around the world. A one-size-fits-all education program for the United States does not work. When he went through school, there were 50 different schools, 50 different states competing against each other, striving for the best way. We went to the moon with these guys. We built rockets with these guys, space shuttles. But the entire program changed when we started teaching the test. We haven't built a space shuttle since then. We haven't gone to the moon since then. We're more worried about what 12 minus 12 equals plus 12 minus 12 plus 2, 12, and 2 jelly beans, which has nothing to do with anything, but they're tested on it. It would be Department of Education Corrections, and it would be Common Core. And any government program, one size fits all, that comes out after that is not acceptable. The states have to have control of K through 12 programs. Department of Education, if it does manage to exist outside of Department of Human Resources or Health and Human Resources, should be focused on the research as they do at Argonne National Labs for cancer research, radical cell research that goes on at Stanford Linear Accelerator, and the contributions and the efforts that goes into those mechanical researches and biological researches to help solve cancer and cure things of that nature could be done through that program without even interfering with K through 12 or any Common Core. So, again, that was not my first choice. Thank you.
Would you vote to re-elect Paul Ryan as the speaker? If not, please give us the name of the person you see as most fit to hold the job.
I am most fit to hold the job, and I would vote for me. Wait, hold on. Understand I have an advantage over a lot of individuals. I know the price of freedom. 3 of my children are disabled veterans. My father, a disabled veteran. Austin Collins went down with a ship on the Arizona during Pearl Harbor. William Collins fought with the Flying Tigers in China against the Japanese prior to the war. My stepbrother shot down in Vietnam. I served. 8 of my children right now are serving still around the world. The most important vote you make in the House of Representatives is for the Speaker of the House. I prefer it to be someone who knows the price and the cost of freedom as compared to what we see now.
Do you support a balanced budget amendment?
Such a lucrative question. There are about 7 of those that are out there, and one of them doesn't even address times of war or disaster. And so you have some pitfalls there. So depending on the organization you're talking to or the group you're talking to, one of them says balanced budget no matter what. So if we were to have a disaster like today in Japan where they have a 7.7 earthquake in southern Japan and they're evacuating the areas right now because a dam is going to break just a few years after Fukushima has happened, and that place is disastrous. They could not survive on a balanced budget. The people would suffer and the country would suffer and they would not recover. Yes, a balanced budget. Yes, to get rid of the debt, just like England and the Exchequer and what cuts they've made because they were strong enough and brave enough to make the cuts and suffer the consequences from the public. This wouldn't even be a conversation if the debt was down, if we were in a budget surplus instead of a national debt. In times of war, during World War II, nobody cared about what we were paying. They bought bonds. They paid taxes. Our highest tax rate was 90%. And nobody cared because they were killing Hitler. They were stopping the Japanese. They were putting Italy in a hole. We live in a lot of fear today. A fear of making decisions. If they would make the decisions that were necessary, this wouldn't even be a conversation. Thank you for that one. That was a real good one.
How do you plan to reduce corporate inversions?
Elaborate. What is a corporate inversion? See, there you go. Is it a legal term? Which it is. Is it a determinate political term that represents 4 or 5 issues? I don't know which one you're asking, so I don't know which one you want to answer to. So let's try the legal one just for the heck of it, okay? There are court systems for that. We have a law of the land. When people are caught bribing people, when people are caught, they do go to jail. We do have a system for that. If you're doing insider trading, we have a system for that as well. We have a system to take these guys and put them in jail for the corruption they support, no matter what level it is. So depending on the inversion you're playing with, is where that can go.
Do you support the popular vote or the Electoral College, and why?
Oh, that's a current question. I like that one. So let's go back in history a little bit. I love this. In ancient Greece, you had pottery. Even before the Spartans had rocks. They had one black rock, one white rock. But in ancient Greece, you had pottery, and you broke up the pottery, and you wrote your vote on the pottery, and you'd walk into the square, and everybody would vote. And you put your pottery in one pot or in the other part, and they'd count it, and that would be the vote. Everybody voted. That was a true form of a democracy. And it failed miserably. It actually fell apart and fell into disaster. The reason it fell apart and fell into disaster is much why and what we are seeing today. People are promising the world if they get voted for. And when they don't deliver the world, you see the dissension and the division that you see today in the party. Because guess what? We've been promised the world for years and nothing was delivered. The integrity of those promises have fallen to nothing. So the true democracy of a winner-take-all vote where everybody votes has a tendency to lead us to rule by mob. Now, that does not go without saying that the Electoral College could use a little bit of modification considering that the effects that have taken place since the Electoral College was first developed. Because all of a sudden, strangely enough, women have the right to vote. And when they first designed this, and they first designed this representation, women did not have the right to vote. But we still haven't changed our Electoral College and what we're laying out. A few other people gained the right to vote in that process as well since we've laid that out. But nothing has been adjusted with the Electoral College, nor does it address the major metropolitan areas and how they carry more weight in the Electoral College than other states that do not meet that population grants. So there are some modifications that can place, but between the two, I would go with the Electoral College, but it does need to be modified. I suspect the next generation, when they come into power, will have a little bit more credibility and ability to do that once we find ourselves in a position to lead that.
What have you done in the last year to save money at work and at home?
I got rid of kids. All right, I know it's an economics question. We can have some fun with that. Keep in mind, and this is kind of unbalanced. I guess this is an uneven question for anyone because I have kids that come and go. Our core group of children on our private Facebook page is 44 kids. We have almost 12 grandchildren. I say almost because by the end of this year we'll have 12 grandchildren. Okay, they're taking over. All right. So when you say save money, we had the two that just got out of the military, didn't have any place to live or stay. So come, you're staying with us. Him and his new wife. So yeah, I was going broke for about 6 months, just losing all kinds of money. And then when he finally landed a job working in Adairsville for a metal company and things came together, then he got his own apartment, got out of the house. So I saved money by getting rid of kids. Okay. Now, we'll leave the wife part of that alone because I'm never going to win that argument. Well, come on, fellas.
Are you currently a member of the Cherokee County Republican Party?
No, I'm a Republican.
Well, we would like our elected Republican leaders, excuse me, to help us grow the party. Please briefly describe any of the significant efforts you have made in the past to support the Republican Party and or Republican candidates locally, statewide, or nationally.
Wow, that is such a great question. The Hayden Collins radio program. We have University of Hawaii, University of Alaska, Nevada, Kennesaw State University, University of North Georgia, Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home, where the director of research at Monticello looks over the radio program and writes for it. And we take every candidate, including presidential candidates that we had during the last election, and introduce them to the youth, the gauntlet. They come to the studio. Herman Cain came to the studio. They face the interns in the studio. The interns prepare their questions. I allow them the entire interview. They do it themselves. And then once they're done, we take them into the studio and we actually do the on-air interview. That grows the party. because it does expose all of the youth and the young Republicans and the listening audience, my listening audience is 17 to 40, to a newer group of individuals that are politically inclined and not polarized. Because on the show we have libertarians, we have Democrats, we have Republicans and independents, and strangely enough they're not trying to kill each other, and they often come up with ideas that everybody can agree on. But I'll have to tell you the best one, since we're talking about Eugene Yu. Came to the radio show for the interview, and just so we could put it out, and we give them the interviews for free, we give them the videos for free, we put it on YouTube so everybody can see it, even they can use it for their campaign to expose it and show everybody they're communicating with the next generation, which grows the party. But Eugene Yu, he won over the interns. He brought fresh ribs and beans and sodas to the interviews. He showed up with a rack full, and they had a great time. But nonetheless, the best exposure we can have and the best way to grow the party is when we welcome people into the party and not subject them, but accept them as they are. Because we have a really significant problem where if people are not Republican enough, they throw them out. The delegate process that I sat through, I watched the chairman stand up in front with another individual and tell somebody they weren't welcome to be there to be a delegate because they hadn't been in the party long enough. We can't keep doing that and expecting success.
Last two tough questions.
Oh, well then, we need to take a 10-minute break then. It's like,
Have you ever been arrested or convicted of a crime excluding traffic offenses?
convicted, right? Okay, just. No, but I have worked with the Georgia Youth Challenge and the Liberty Program in the state of Georgia, where we take gang members and we work with them significantly, where I go to the base that they're at, most of the time it's Augusta, work directly with the gang members, help them get their GED and bring them forward, and then help them get a job afterwards. Now, we're not talking CEO type positions, but when you have an individual that was raised in a neighborhood that's a tier 1 neighborhood in a school system that's still using chalkboards where you don't even have computers in it, it's chronic poverty. They can't get out, they can't go anywhere. When they turn to gangs, that's where they get their options from, that nobody else gives them options. When we take that gang member and the court, the juvenile court takes that gang member and they say, here's an opportunity. If you agree to go down there with Captain Collins and the rest of these guys in the Georgia Youth Challenge and you subject yourself to 6 to 9 months and you get your GED, we'll wipe your record clean. You got a 97% success rate. And these members, when they get out, they know they have it better and they don't go back. Now, I won't say we lose one every now and then. I'm sure we do. I haven't lost any of the ones that I've mentored. So not only have I not, but I make sure that the example that I have set works with these kids and we give them an opportunity for success instead of closing them out in the system and creating another poverty level and a chronic poverty level that they can't get out of.
Have you ever been the subject of professional discipline or cited for breach of ethics or unprofessional conduct by any disciplinary committee, court, administrative agency, or other professional group?
No. But as a captain in the military and as a captain of my unit and service for my unit, I've issued out several of those Article 15s. Sometimes you kind of wish the soldiers would show up on time, if you know what I mean. And I have worked with the mast as well. So, on the Marine Corps side and the Navy side, when they've gone to mast, I've actually worked with the mast as well, but not in a legal capacity, more along the lines of a witness capacity, because a lot of the problems we have, and this is why we have such a rough suicide rate. Our suicide rate's like 28 people. My colonel killed herself 2 years ago. Okay, I lost a chief warrant officer last year right before Christmas. And what we have with these subjective individuals, we even have Veterans Court now, which is really good, but that's strictly related to drugs. But these guys find themselves in positions to where often the most littlest possible thorn in your side becomes amplified because of the condition you're in. And they do not have the opportunities for recovery and nobody listens or pays attention to them. So issuing out a lot of these so-called Article 15s, if you will, if that should ever happen, allegedly, so on and so forth, one has to be mindful that a lot of this is due to stress at home. It's due to stress during deployments. It's due in stress, like the family support group. When the 108th was deployed, we got rear guard duty. So we had to cover rear guard. As we were covering rear guard, some of the strangest things would happen. We would get a call, hey, could you come over to the house? The sink's all backed up. We don't know if we need to call a plumber or not. Well, in order to save that soldier's wife money, we go take a look at the sink. We go over there, and Chief Dorsey and I are sitting down drinking a cup of coffee, and he walks over there, says, I'll take a look at it. She had plastic over the top of it. He pulls it up, reaches in, cleans everything, and hits the switch. And she goes, oh, you got it to fix. She had never cooked. Her husband was the chef. She had never been in the kitchen. She didn't know there was a switch. But it had amplified because it wasn't working. You know, she poured the water down. It didn't work. She didn't know. But allowing that little stress relief and giving that little bit of support helps eliminate a lot of the felonies, a lot of the problems that are going on, and a lot of the people that are in chronic poverty that go that route, they don't have the support group to go tell them, flip the switch. So it's a very good question, but I think we have some opportunities. I spent the last year in Philadelphia working with all the Tier 1 schools and the Title I schools in Philadelphia. Schools that were built in 1926 that still use chalkboards and do not have computers in the classroom. They give them breakfast because they can't get food at home. They sneak them a little bag after school with food in it, and they put it in their backpack so nobody's embarrassed to take the food home so they can have something to eat that night for the next day. The can of chicken noodle soup is close to, what, $2 and some odd cents at the corner store. You have to take the bus to get to the grocery store, and some of your food may go spoiled before you get back from that bus ride because there's no local grocery stores. And this is in Philadelphia, the city. These are things that we have to avoid. These are the things that we have to correct. So your question will never have to come up to individuals who are running for office, and they may have to say, oops, we start correcting that problem. That one won't be an issue.
Thank you very much for your time. Is
Oh,
there
that's
anything?
it?
That's it.
Oh, wow. Everybody visit collinsforcongress.org. I thought we'd have an opportunity to really dive into education here and beat that one up. You know, that was pretty good. Keep in mind, you're not going to find a greater advocate for Veterans Affairs than an individual who has 3 children that are disabled vets. You're not going to find a greater advocate for education than somebody who's had 153 children go through public schools and private schools. And you're not going to find a greater advocate for the deaf or finance than somebody who's got a vested interest in the next generation and recognizes that our most important resource in the United States is our youth. I'm Hayden Collins. I'd like your vote, and thank you very much. Gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.